everyone. This is Sophia Smallstorm. I'm here with a new guest, Ella Draper, also now known as Ella Gareeva. She is quite a phenomenal person. I've just gotten to know her recently. I had known of her going back to the time of the Hampstead children story as it hit the internet. Elisa and Gabriel of Hampstead, London, and their story of this terrible activity that was going on at their school. And there was a series of YouTube videos that went up on this, and then some very detailed commentary on various websites. So I have Ella here with me today to discuss this event. Ella, a warm welcome to you.
Thank you so much, Sophia. Hello to everyone, and it's so very kind of you to invite me.
It's my pleasure, and I think it's very important. I heard you on an interview with Jaren from the Jarenism channel, and then Sean Turnbull of SGT Report interviewed you, and then I learned of a way to contact you, and we got in touch, and we started having some discussions, and I offered you an interview as well, so here we are. So Ella, I know that, this whole story, I hardly even know where to begin. I'm going to link the Sean Turnbull interview of Ella because he gave a very good recap of the Hampstead case, which has become one of the most discussed pedophilia, Satanism, satanic ritual abuse cases in recent history that are going on or that have gone on in the UK. So Ella, let's just start kind of at the beginning. We'll start out of your head. You were noticing some strange behaviors in your children. So can you give us a chronology of that, going back to what year and the kinds of things that they were doing?
Okay, well, it's all started with one incident when we went on holidays. Alisa was about 1 year old, just about, and Gabriel, I was pregnant with Gabriel. They're only 14 months apart. And so we went together with Diamond during this short time of relationship, and at one point during afternoon, Alisa was started to. I was in the kitchen, most likely. I don't quite remember, but I wasn't in the room, and she suddenly started to show a lot of distress, and she just was fine. She was fed, she was changed, but something deeply troubled her. And I asked Ricky, what's going on? What happened to him? Why she's so upset? Oh, I don't know. She just always wants her way. And this was quite off-putting. A child of a baby 1 year old wants her way. Of course, children are a little bit manipulative, that we know, but she was really, really distressed. And I took her out. We went to the park, and I was cuddling her and pushing the stroller around, but she wouldn't stop. She just was so upset, and it went for I don't know, hour and a half, non-stop. I know she was pushing out of the stroller. If I would take her out, she would just lie down, and it just was terrible instance. And I could never worked it out until I found out what happened to the children. So that was and then during their early age, maybe 2, 3, 4 years old, there was something not quite right there, and I was not quite sure what it was, because really the majority of time they stayed with me. Then I had a household help and nanny on occasions. I was working at home always, so children were at front of me majority of the time. They didn't go to kindergarten, and also I wanted them to educate in Russian language, so they're fluent in both languages now. They read, they write in both languages, and And I was investing in their education development and wanted to spend as much time as possible with them. But there was always something in the background, some issue that um, was kind of like undercurrent issue that was going on. They were they were doing their tantrums like many children of this age do. They try to establish they attempt to establish their uh, ego and independence, but it was something not quite right about those tantrums. Like, for example, Alisa would kick the fridge and really like would be really angry, like express so much anger. And Gabriel, sometimes when either me or our nanny would come back from the walk, just around getting in the house, Gabriel would also start to. He just would refuse to go home. She would just lie down on the ground and scream and cry and just be in total hysterical mode. And at that time, the relationship between us already been terminated long before that point. However, he still kept seeing children, and I didn't really connect those two things, children's behavior and him. I guess I was naive and really not sort of informed on the issues in England, especially. And as we know, sodomy, it's it's a it's an integral part of British society, British culture, and that's what I learned later on with the research. And children, they wanted to see him, especially Alisa. Gabriel he didn't seem to be bothered too much, and of course I could not stop the contact. I didn't really have obvious reasons to stop. He would take children to the park. He would take children to the Hampstead village, and he didn't really do much with the children playing wise or education. But he was bragging a lot. He would take them out and see what kind of children I've got, and just would. But what children disclose, he's actually been taking them, and so looks like he started to molest them when they were really young. In Alice's diary, I guess it's published somewhere, maybe in Hampstead Cover Up in one of the posts. There is a diary of Alisa where she's saying that he started to do this perverted sexual behavior on children at a very early age, before they started to speak.
So let's
And
stop there, Ella. Let's go back to the first incident that you described with the vacation you were on with Ricky, your husband, and Elisa getting extremely upset, carrying on for a very long time, not being able to calm down, and you, of course, had no idea what happened. And you said that at the time she began to, let's just call it fuss, but in this very extreme way, you weren't even in the room. And so something happened when you were out of the room, and she became very overt, upset in her baby way, because she was, a year? And she was basically reacting, or I would say even calling for help. And your husband said that she just wanted her way. And it was an extreme incident. So that was like the first thing on the chronology, it sounds like, right?
yeah. By the way, we were never married. It was a really short-lived relationship, and I started to notice other strange signs as well, about something about his behavior, his comments. So I distanced myself very quickly. But yeah, that was very profound incident. And I came actually quite quickly to the room because first she didn't like scream and shout. First I heard she wasn't happy, and I'm asking what's happening, what's going on with Alisa. Oh, she's okay. But I think he was making pictures. He's when we met, he introduced himself as a photographer, amongst other things, and he was doing quite a lot of photographs of the children. He was making a lot of photographs, and now, at the time, I did have some questions why he would make pictures of the children, like their private parts. So kind of like maybe Alisa would lie down, legs spread, and he would take it naked from that angle. But then I thought maybe also, you see, I was trying to explain to myself all these incidents in a more innocent way, or maybe he's just loving his daughter, his children so much. He's like he doesn't mind which angle to take the photograph. I guess I was a bit naive as well. So yeah, something happened, something dramatic happened at this time because she was so distressed, and doesn't matter how I would comfort and try to play with her and try to distract her. It was something like not physical. It was something like psycho emotional, some really distorted state. And this type of the behavior, this distortion in disturbance, the extreme disturbance in their psyche would also be more pronounced in the latest school years. They were going for about 2 years to Christchurch School before the August events of 2014. So yes, and that but at that time for about a year and a half before they disclosed while on holidays in Morocco, um, those incidences of increased violence as well that came up on the scene, um, started to come in their interaction between each other more regular. And I'm talking about extreme violence out of nowhere. And I could not think of the school. And I didn't mention that before. I thought maybe something, I don't do correct as a mother, but, I'm just investing so much time on my children, and I'm loving them, to my best ability. But perhaps there is something, some flaws in my parenting. And of course, and then I'm going educating myself, some positive parenting courses, and I went to see a child psychologist as well around this time, because it really was just so deeply disturbing. But I tell you what was the most disturbing was
Well, let's hold
to
on before you get to that, because I want to just go along at a pace where I can understand and I don't have these lingering questions that I'll forget about later. So we're going to talk about the very most disturbing thing in a minute. But I wanted to ask you, I never realized that this Ricky Dearman wasn't your husband, that you weren't married to him. But you did have 2 children with him in a very short span of time. So was that just part of your personal philosophy or something? Do you want to?
no, I didn't plan children with him. I was not quite sure about the relationship at all. But somehow I on some level I got pulled into it. Mm, Perhaps it was my karma. Who knows? Well, obviously it is. And
Yeah, no, I'm not trying to imply anything, but I didn't know that this was part of the actual record of facts, that you were not married to this man, but he is the father
no,
of two
no.
children.
It seemed I actually thought about it quite a bit, and I think it was his agenda was to find a correct woman and to have children with her, and that I think that's what happened. And on well, without kind of going into it really, I would say that he planned it and he made it happen without my consent, I would say.
To find
Uh,
what kind of a woman to have children with her? I didn't catch that word.
well, I don't know whatever the certain women they're looking for, or was it accident? I'm not quite sure, but he's obviously he was looking for a woman to have children with, and that children was the main thing.
He was looking to breed with a particular kind of woman, and you fit the bill.
Looks like it.
Yeah, and he managed somehow to get you pregnant. I'm not quite sure how, and you may not be sure, but this is what happened. And you had these two very, very adorable children. But early in the time frame of their lives, they were doing, they were throwing these tantrums, which is a sign of something. But I'm sure that there are many mothers out there who don't even know where to begin when their children display behaviors that are out of the ordinary, or they don't know that it's out of the ordinary.
That's so very true. And you know what? We had an incident at some point early on in the campaign when we were surrounded by those shields and agents, and we've done an interview explaining the science of behavior. And there was that woman who got in contact with us, and she said, and she's explaining that she is observing a very similar science, very similar behavior, and she started to expand on it. And looks like the girl was going through the same experience and displaying it in a very similar manner. And it's true that many parents or many women, I would say, because a lot of single women, a lot of single mothers are targeted, and or there would be women maybe from outside of England, like in my case, foreigners maybe from Europe or Eastern Europe, and would be English men, and the relationship would be shortly lived. It will fall apart very quickly. And in a lot of cases, women do not know, or some of them come across it, the um, the phenomenon of pedophilia in England. It's just so pervasive. And now even looking at other people, other children that I knew, maybe Alice's friends or friends from not outside of the school even, and you can see that now. Analyzing, I'm saying that the girl, she wants to spend time out of the house in her friend's house. She doesn't want to come back home after school. She never wants to be in the house. And this mother, she's like, why don't she doesn't want to be in the house? And I'm just now thinking, well, maybe the guy was abusing the girl, and the girl, it was from her first marriage. She came with a girl from Russia. And Eastern European women also have no clue. This is the problem.
Yeah, because in the communist environment, they were not able to. That wasn't a society that galloped forward as fast as Western society has, and so you tend to be more traditional, maybe, and less aware of developments in psychology and whatnot. Is that right?
That's correct. That's correct, because it was, this iron, what is it? Iron curtain, right?
Right. So it began with a holiday very early in Elisa's life, and then there was a huge revelation on another holiday, which was much more recent. And it was in that holiday to Morocco where you went with Abraham and the two children who are now quite a bit older, but still small children, that you learned the details of what had been happening for all these years. But before we get into that, since that's already been covered elsewhere also, I don't know how long we'll take on that, tell me what you were about to tell me, the most disturbing development.
Oh, well, I just felt, I felt inside of me, there was something deeply wrong, and of course, you cannot rest. It's just so unsettling, where you're feeling something, but you can't really put your finger on it, and it's so. so present and so vivid and just such a part of your life, but you're somehow veiled from the truth, from the reality. Simply, I don't know, maybe because it's not the time for you to see. Anyhow, the maybe last half a year before this revelations in Morocco, I started to notice uh, such a coldness and such a sarcasm in Alisa, totally inappropriate for her age. And she just would get just so emotionless and cold, and she would make some not negative, not nasty remarks, but about sort of life in general, but with such pessimism in it.
So like
And
cynical. She had
cynical,
cynicism.
very cynical. She was increasingly um, going down this direction, become more cynical. This is correct word, not sarcasm so much, cynicism. And with Gabriel, I started to notice also something which deeply was disturbing to me. He would talk, we would be talking about something, and then he would just look somewhere and he would just started to think, and then we keep talking, but he would have like a glaze over his eyes, the eyes that don't see. It's just like he's switching the reality. And I never noticed this before about him. And it's only both Alisa and Gabriel started to display this about a half of year, I would say maybe, yeah, about 7 months, 7, 6, 7, 8 months before August 2014. And it wasn't getting, those incidences were becoming more frequent. And of course, yeah, well, that was something that, I couldn't really sleep in peace, I would say.
So they were disconnecting, and you noticed this more and more in both of them. They were getting glazed over, they weren't present, they were somewhere else. And this is a form of dissociation or disconnection, which I believe is a reflex. It's a defense reflex when you're getting abused in a very dramatic way. So, do you think they were just bringing it into the setting with you because it was a um, sort of a it's mental, emotional, psychological reflex that they had or habit that they had?
Well, you just said it a few seconds ago. The dissociative identity disorder. That's what they want to instill in everybody's consciousness, or turn everybody into these people with this disorder. Well, in England, at least, it's a small country, and they doing it in schools on a massive level. Looks like, seems like it, and and I think that's what children started to develop. And this is, as you said, as you mentioned, it's the way for our consciousness to cope with extreme abuse, with extreme pain. And this is what this trauma-based, those programs based on trauma. And we know there is a documented history of that, and I won't go too deep into it, but we know it's been going on, and we've seen all these scandals. Nazis been doing it, experiments on humans, then those Operation Paperclip, those 500 scientists been moved to South America, and then America and the CIA been formed. So we know that the Bill Clinton confirmed that yes, those experiments on humans did take place in the universities and schools, and sometimes those experiments were unethical. And so we know it's been going on, and And now I think these are what I was observing with my children, that were the symptoms, um, and the consequences, the effect on their consciousness, because they've been they've been forced to participate in human sacrifice. And what a more traumatic experience that could be. I mean, I don't know. There are probably not much more of most traumatic experience for human being to take life of another human being.
Exactly. And so you mentioned trauma-based, I think you meant to say trauma-based mind control, and that your children were displaying the stamp of trauma-based mind control that was starting to creep into their behavior on a more and more apparent uh, basis. And you said also that this is what they're trying to do in the schools in the UK. So do you mean in all the schools to all the children, or in select schools to select victim children that they have identified for these kinds of purposes? What do you mean by that?
Well, Hampstead belongs to Camden Council. It's a big part of London and big council. And Hampstead happens to be the place for the most concentrated uh, number of schools per mile in the whole England. And children mentioned that, well, they were discussing this in Jean Clément recording, and actually those of listeners who are interested in knowing and learning the details, it's not only the police interviews and children's home recordings that were recorded on the way from Morocco to England, but also this recording made by Jean Clément Yahirou that was concealed on the second day of an investigation. And the judge, Buffley, she acknowledged this fact, but failed to order the reinvestigation of the case. And because this recording is very significant, children are talking exactly about the same details in a different environment with different adults, with one police constable, who is Abraham's brother-in-law, and children were saying the same thing, but also different details about shoes made of baby skin and where it was made. And they just describe all the details, and I know exactly what they're talking about.
Who is Jean Clément?
Jean Clément, he is a police constable and brother-in-law of Abraham, and he was the first person that we talked to. Because obviously the information we were receiving from the children was highly, deeply disturbing, and we needed some professional advice. So was because he's a relative of Abraham. So, and he seemed to be a good person. I'm sure he's a clean person, and so he's the one who recorded the children the first. We arrived on the 4th of September to the UK on Abraham's birthday, and we went straight to Jean Clément's house, and he recorded the children, and where we're talking about the secret rooms of their abusers, of their dwellings, secret rooms in the church, and the drawings of the tattoos, and irremovable distinguishing marks, of course, of their on the front privates of the abusers, including pierce rings, and which never been investigated. The accused had never stepped forward and to say, yeah, well, here, investigate me. No one done it. And coming back to your question about all the schools are doing it, well, children mention at least 10 schools in the area of Hampstead. And when we went on the drive once, because we wanted to verify an address of Dearman, some secret address, and so we We were driving by another school, another big, private, very prestigious school, which everybody in the area want to get into, Highgate School. And Gabriel saying, yeah, well, Mom, here, they're doing it here too. And I've seen also, I now remember seeing children who are actually going to the school. And actually, one friend of mine, her boy is going to the school. And something also not quite right about this boy. I noticed quite a few times. I made a mental notice to myself. He was some kind of suppressed and timid, and something was as if he was like just scared to make a move, incorrect move, what to say, what not to say. It was important now for me to remember as well. And then we've got this incident with this woman who identified the same symptoms in her daughter, and that happened also in a Catholic church in somewhere North England.
The children said that it happened at the Highgate School as well. How would they
He
know
was
that?
taking them there. Looks like he was very active. I'm talking about Demon. He was very active in this network. I don't know this for sure, but at some point in 2011, he relinquished his parental rights completely. He dropped the contacts, and publicly in the court, I received full custody, and he's left. He's left England, and he wasn't there for about a year. So we know that he was for about maybe half a year in LA, which is one of the centers of the mind control programming. Also, then he spent time in India, and looks like children saying he was taking them to the other school to introduce this to other schools. And they were giving names of other school head teachers. They were giving names of the schools. They know where the schools are located. They Gabriel describes this the emblem, the symbol of one of the school as a big tree, and this is, I believe, it's Hampstead Heath School, not just nearby from Christchurch. And he's saying, yeah. In Jean Clement's recording, children are talking about it. It's really interesting recording, and. So, and then the research that we both, Abraham and myself, done, it shows that, it's been going on all around England. Those cases were uh, exploding here and there around maybe 70s, 80s, and then they started to becoming really good in covering them up and setting up this network of social services. Kafka's people is the same thing, social services, but in the secret family court, and this other adoption agency, foster care families, this whole paradigm of this culture. They're there to filter the victims, so nobody talks, nobody get to hear about anything, and they've got it locked. They're doing whatever they're doing, and they have their mechanism to deal with the witnesses very efficiently, I would say, but they're getting slack, like they've got slack with our case.
So where you could say pretty much that where the children are, the pedophiles go, or the pedophiles arrange to educate children and conduct children's activities so they will draw children to them, and children will be enrolled by unsuspecting parents in these programs.
Well, even though it's a Christian church, Catholic church, I went to the opening days, and it didn't seem like too religious school. It was quite open-minded. It seems like they were studying different religions, so it's supposed to be a really good school, a really good public school. There are only like three really good, two actually good schools in Hampstead, non-private, and the results are supposed to be good, and it is in our area. We received a space. which is if you are in the certain mileage from the school, then you're supposed to get a place for this school. It's a free school, you don't have to pay, but majority of schools in Hampstead are private, in fact. And with my eldest son, I know a lot of schools, and he ended up going to also another state school. I know the schools pretty well. I lived in the area for quite a long time. I have friends, I know people in this area with children. But they did indicate that a lot of other schools are involved, and this is like it's very concerning, very disturbing fact. And then of course we've got Tavistock Institute in the same area of Hampstead, and next door Royal Free Hospital, which also working with Tavistock Institute. But there is something important I was going to mention. Later on during our research, we found documents, the minutes of the board meeting between head teachers of the school in Camden, with the representatives of Tavistock Institute, who are actually claiming to be an authority in dissociative identity disorder. However, they're the one who are most likely actually pushing for this mass programming of the children. And that will be someone from the Board of Education. So it's like we can see from those documents, from those minutes, even though they don't talk about what's been discussed, but even the representatives from different institutions are indicative to what could be going on. It needs to be researched. It needs to be looked into. But looks like it's a centralized network, and it's been done intentionally, deliberately, but in disguise, and also hidden under this veil of the Satanism. Because what we came to realize is that this satanic element is there to distract you and to create non-credible disclosures. Because when, like for example, when my children were talking about it, I know for a fact that many people wanted to not believe it. And of course, it's easiest thing not to believe it, because otherwise you've got to do something about it. But so I guess it's also maybe some protection mechanism on a psychological level for that particular person not being able to look into it, because it's just so shocking. But the satanic element there is been incorporated on purpose, deliberately, to create non-credible disclosure, but of course because of the central aspect and central tenet of the TBMC, trauma-based mind control programming, is sodomy, which has been popularized by Aleister Crowley, and then by studied and spread by Kinsey. And we know how results for his experiments, how he's been attained. We know that he was hiring criminals in perverts from prisons, using male prostitutes and sadistic pedophiles to rape little children from the age of from 6 months to 5 years old. And he's behind the sex revolution in the United States, right? I actually went to our website, and because I knew we might be discussing something about the sodomy. And let me just read it to you, if you don't mind. Just the little paragraph from our website about Aleister Crowley and the importance of it. The Rite of Sodomy, popularized by Aleister Crowley. If you don't mind?
No, do go ahead.
So the rite of sodomy, popularized by Aleister Crowley, is central to the TBMC programs. The satanic, Luciferian, occult, sexual abuse, magic elements of the TBMC programs help to obscure the significance of the central tenet of TBMC, the rite of sodomy, whereby the children, trainee slaves, are sodomized with dildos or other implements in order to manipulate nerve endings at the base of the spine, which stimulate the pineal gland, the master gland, and the center of psychic awareness in the human mind, which governs our third eye, giving the subject flashes of cosmic consciousness, allowing the master handler to bind and control their slave. The pineal gland physically affects every system in the human body, having the potential to determine the expansion and contraction of psychic awareness, consciousness, and experience of divinity. There is also a very short film here on our website about this and about how significant are the books and the theory and this whole movement instigated by Aleister Crowley, because he's the one talking about how significant sodomy is. And then also Kinsey, he talks about that sodomy is a matter of conditioning. I really feel that is very, very good short film, which help many people to fully comprehend this whole really the fundamental of this whole satanic trauma-based mind control, this whole phenomenon is the sodomy, which is satanic and which is unnatural.
You said that the satanic element is a deliberate inclusion which creates incredible disclosures that are not going to be believed. So are you saying that Satanism is, it's kind of like a fanciful part of this, or is it part of their belief system and mindset, or is just added in because nobody will believe it if you call it Satan
Right.
worship?
The whole mind control programming, the history of it's going back to many centuries, many thousands of years back in the history, and the foundation of Tavistock Institute in 1920s wasn't an accident. It was part of this whole development of this agenda to enslave human beings, and that's my interpretation, my personal interpretation. So it's not, please don't take it for for fact, and also it's a lot of material there to research. So I do encourage those of you listeners who are interested to dig deeper in those areas in the history of it. And what happened, that satanic element with its sacrifices, it fits perfectly. We know that those secret intelligences, they were cooperating with the satanic groups. They were seeking their cooperation, because they looks like during those experimentation on humans, they must have come to the conclusion. But we know that even ancient Egyptians knew about the sodomy. This is the way to enslave an individual's consciousness. So, and of course, satanic groups, satanic practices, including sodomy and bestiality and human sacrifices. This this is a traumatic aspect of it. So But the sodomy, the rite of sodomy, is the main axis of this whole phenomenon that we're dealing with. That's what our research shows. They could be called pedophilic network, but I would call them a sodomite death cult. Abraham goes further. He says it's Masonic sodomite death cult, but let's just say sodomite death cult. They worship death, they glorify death, and that's why they perform sacrifices to bribe the angel of death in exchange for external life. And this is what they really want. They're really fearful of death, and this is the whole phenomenon I believe we're dealing with.
They bribe the angel of death for their own
Well, that's what they believe.
immortality.
That's what they believe, and also there are other beliefs there. Drinking the blood within Talmudic Jewish population. And it happens in many walks of life. It happens in Middle East, in certain aspect of Islam. I wouldn't talk bad about Islam because it's a beautiful religion, truly peaceful religion, but we know there are facts that is going on there too. That is going on, especially within elite, and but then those the one who's been advocating and legalizing the marriages between very old men with very young girls as young as 6 years old. And that's why so many deaths are happening right now. The young girls are dying from being sexually assaulted in those Arabic countries. So it's going on everywhere, and it looks like it's a culprit. I'm quite sure if it's correct term, culprit of the whole control. So their control is based on the phallus in the context of sodomy, and this is what they want. That's why such a encouragement of gay movement and gay revolution, and music and programming in music. It's all about for everyone to get involved into sodomy. We're talking about sodomy in the anal passage, where we've got also the tangled and very concentrated area for the nerve system at the end of the spine. Well, spine housing central nervous system anyhow, right? But at the end there is a tangle of those special nerves, and in esoteric cultures they believe that the Kundalini energy, the spiritual energy, the awakening, the spiritual awakening energy is residing at, and of course people who are practicing spirituality, many of them know that you don't need to wake up Kundalini through certain practices. It actually wakes up on its own when you're ready, when you came to the point when you can handle the awakening of Kundalini energy. And so, but what happens here, by manipulating the nerve endings at the base of the spine, they are forcing this energy to rise up towards the pineal gland and to cause the short-lived spiritual awakening. And Aleister Crowley calls it Stargate. They believe they can, through sodomizing young boys and girls, they can enter into some kind of different um, universes and become a master of those universes. So this is, I mean, this is in a nutshell his teaching. But there is this film which is I told you about. It's really incredible, where it talks about where he talks about that he wants to seduce all the boys in the United Kingdom, and so he was very well aware that this is the way to control consciousness, because he went to India, and also in India this black magic tantra they also practicing similar methods.
It sounds to me like this is an age-old technique of dominating and controlling and stealing the spirit of and the consciousness of a victim that's helpless, smaller than you are, or somehow can't defend themselves against you. And I still don't quite understand how it's linked to the Satan figure, other than because if Christianity was newer and this is much older, then we know that the Babylonian culture also had its Baphomet and other bizarre gods. But to be using this in the modern age the way they are, and to have hopes and visions of ensnaring all the children in it so that they can create, I think you said once to me, a culture of killers. And I want to go to the instance in the interview with the police in which Gabriel described how plastic willies were used on him, and there were different colors. There was the brown one, which was the lowest of the order, and then the golden colored one was next, and the white ones were the highest. And as I was listening to this, and I know other people have commented the same thing to me, we are wondering, well, why do they use these plastic tools, these dildo type things, when they could just be using their own bodies and their own sex organs? But you explained to me why they use the plastic.
Yeah. It seems like these hard implements, they are more effective in manipulating those nerve endings, while they're mind controlling children with also with other techniques like well, they injecting them, perhaps they injecting some drugs, they giving them drugs, they sedating them, sacrificing children, they're doing certain rituals, and so many things spring to mind while I'm attempting to answer your question. Gabriel and Alisa have also explained that they use those plastic willies to also hurt them, to create more pain. So I feel that they use it to make those programming more effective in several ways. That's what my understanding. And also about the color of the willies, I think as being attempting to be an actor, I think his demon, he's got to be an entertainer in him. I feel those dancing with the skulls, and I guess it's also to add to the trauma, but it's a little bit of some funny aspect the children described, like he wears this hat with the willy, or two on both sides, looks like horns but willies. And of course the way they're drawing is just really funny, and the way they describe that how is a bit of like a theater that is. But I guess it's children are terrified.
Ella, you mentioned that the hard implements hurt more, and I guess that would mean that the human body, the sex organs, the penis, for instance, isn't as rigid and hard and wouldn't cause as much pain. So the increasing the pain is one goal here, and to make the whole technique more effective.
I feel that they are, a lot of them being also in this area in the English society. Many of those people, they also grew up like that. A lot of them being sodomized from the beginning. Remember, the integral part of British society, and it's also Aleister Crowley. He's saying that it's a prerogative of the elite, and if middle class wants to be smart, they better catch up. And so they're sodomites, men and women.
So it seems like it's a rite of passage among the elite, and it's a kind of special treatment that's extremely painful and harrowing and alters your consciousness. And it's performed dynastically, generation upon generation. And this is what's so hard for people to believe, that the authorities, our rulers, they do this kind of thing and it's part of their culture. And so, can I ask you this question? You said that what you're talking about is simply what you've learned from Elisa and Gabriel in terms of the activities and the behaviors and the events that went on or go on in the school. But you've also done a lot of independent studies. So I have two questions. Is there any possibility that your children are exaggerating or inventing this? Or any part of it exaggerating it? I'm just asking you.
I don't think they were exaggerating. It's a good question. I'm going to do my best to answer it. It's an incredible phenomenon that what we're dealing with here, and they were telling us, or not only us, other professionals, the doctor, the police, the foster care, about things that obviously children would have no source to know to get it from. In my house, we don't watch television. The access to all the devices, all the equipment is strict. That you can't just go on internet. But they were talking about it. So, well, maybe not in the beginning when they've been disclosing, because it was really extremely traumatic for all of us. But I guess for us as adults more than for them, because for them it was finally a relief to talk about it. But for us, it was a shock, and it was extreme level of stress. But in regards exaggerating, I would say they were not exaggerating, but they were lying a lot of the time. When they were, you see, they were conditioned also to protect this cult. And whenever we were coming in with our questions, we were coming maybe too close to some particular sensitive information about how this cult operates, they would switch. They would stop cooperating, and they would start to lie, give wrong information, and we would spot it right away when they were doing it. And what triggered this behavior was the intimate touching of each other, and they were made to do it. They were taught to do that forcefully, to perform this act 5 times a day strictly. And if they were not, their dad would punish them by sadistic rape, or with those licks with those spaghetti spoon, as children describing it. And yeah, so that would trigger this conditioning, and they would switch, and they would stop cooperating, they would stop telling us the truth. But also we've been asking them very similar questions independently. Like, for example, they did in the police interview, one by, like I would ask question Alisa in one room, and Abraham would ask Gabriel in the other room. And then we would come and cross-reference what we heard, and then we know that is true. And then we would discuss about things, and then all of a sudden I would ask, or Abraham would ask some questions about what we heard before, so to kind of continuously, testing them. But we knew that the touching thing was as soon as they did it, and they developed incredible way to do it by sign language, and they've been taught this in school, sign language, and they of course they modified and improved between themselves, so they know, well, when I'm busy, like preparing food, they quickly go in the bathroom and touch, and they would give them each other signs. Let's go touch. Mama is not looking. Or distract mama. Oh yeah, I want to eat. I want to eat. So mama's going to prepare food. They go to touch, and this is how they condition the children.
So they're given orders by their father, and this was like a new development. They were told to go and sexually touch each other in the bathroom 5 times a day. So it became a daily ritual, and they had to develop a secret signing to one another to go and do it because they didn't want you to know about it, obviously.
We spotted it during that holidays in Morocco, because we were not we already got we realized that this touching is some kind of conditioning, and we've got to prevent it from happening. But somehow they would outsmart us on many occasions, and we will be angry with each other, that like, look, they've touched again, you didn't look properly, you haven't been on top of them, and then they would fall in this also uh, depraved behavior, like putting feces on our, no, not feces, they were wiping the toilet with our toothbrushes, things like that. Or at some point they admitted that they wanted to kill us.
So they were secretly contaminating yours and Abraham's toothbrushes. This was on the holiday in Morocco. And I guess I'm going to say here, as I think about what you tell me, that when you're in a house and there's many rooms, you can't keep an eye on children as much as you can when you're in closer quarters, for instance, on holiday, and you're in a smaller, maybe a couple of hotel rooms or a timeshare where everybody is cooped up closer physically, and people don't have their extraneous activities. So you were able to be in this clustered situation with them. You were able to spot things.
Well
So maybe
spotted.
that's why all the disclosures came out in Morocco. And so you found out somehow as well that they were contaminating your toothbrushes.
Well, it looks like it was Alisa's idea, and they've been also doing the same thing to me for 2 years prior to that. Well, it wasn't Alisa's, of course, idea. It was her father's idea. He told children to do it to me, and I've been experiencing some really troublesome issue with my digestion this whole time, and I couldn't put also my finger on it. What was causing the trouble? And especially with quite a healthy lifestyle and diet, it was really, and it was extreme too. However, they at some point when we were getting close to some sensitive pieces of information, they were doing things like that to undermine our our efforts. And also, for example, we were talking together, me and Abraham, and were about what's going on, about the case, about what's children's experience, about other children's involved, about all of this stuff. But when we start to work out certain little aspect, they would try to disturb us. Alisa especially. Well, Alisa is older. Alisa is a bit more adaptable, more. That's why she was a bit more believable at the retraction interviews than Gabriel. Gabriel was completely just so kind of open and But Alisa she quickly realized that she better retract somehow, and then you can see she's lying there. She's just putting lie into lie, and this is how we knew during disclosure when they were lying, because it's just obvious when she started to like talk her sort of talk about different things, talk about irrelevant events, or just trying to distract you. And that's what they would do, especially Alisa and Gabriel too. Whenever they would hear that we're working out something in the story, they would drop on the conversations and try to distract us. And of course. And also, their father was telling them to kill me for 2 years. And then when Abraham started to spend more time in my house, he ordered them to cut the flock of his hair. And he had big patch for quite a while after that. And Alisa sent Gabriel to do that, and he did it with the scissors, and it was the way of demon to get children to get introduced to the idea that they might need to kill me or Abraham, because he was telling them to kill me, right? And then Abraham started to become a I would say something that what was very concerning for them, because he started to get close, he started to work things out. That's why we had this incident in school, when the school completely overreacted to the small little polite comment to the teacher which Abraham made about not to feed Alisa with sweeties, because I notified school that Alisa had some problems with sugar, but I didn't realize it was sugar actually, but it was whatever they was doing to the children, because she was breaking in those red patches all around her mouth, and I thought it was to do with the sugar. And one day Abraham spotted. He arrived early to school, and he spotted a teacher giving Alisa like a lot of sweets, because this is how they bribe children as well. They terrorize them so they don't speak. They threaten them with the death of their loved ones, and of course, and they would bribe them with the sweeties. And this is how they got children.
Yeah, I remember that from the interviews. It's very easy, you give children, they have an affinity for sugar. Children can tolerate incredibly sweet taste, and they like it for some reason. And this is how it's a very simple way of luring children into doing things and then rewarding them with something that they've been conditioned to believe is a treat, right? But that's very sad that they were being given orders to kill you and take a lock of Abraham's hair. I guess that would be the first introduction to using blades, in this case scissors, on one or the other of you. But it's so difficult even to listen to this, and I can't imagine what it has been like for you to live it and your horrible distress when you're learning about it, and the amount of research you've done and the degree to which you've plumbed and interpreted and analyzed and understood and can explain these trauma-based mind control methodologies, and that apparently this very prevalent practice of it and its aim is to take over our entire society.
And also to create an army of children killers, because there would be they know they're going to be rebels, they're going to be independent thinkers who's not going to like it, or just normal people who can't comprehend this idea, whose humanity, human essence would not be accepting that. So that's why they're bringing up this army of satanic soldiers.
Ella, you said once on another interview that I heard that Ricky was trying to entice you or invite you into these practices as well, but you weren't going for it. And so when I think about, the way that you've put all of this together, and you've had to have done a lot of research, a lot of reading, a lot of thinking, and then of course, it's one thing for other people to do it who don't have an immediate experience of this, but in your case, it's your own dear children who've been altered and maybe in some ways irretrievably altered by these techniques. Because once you embed these experiences into somebody's personality and memories, I don't think they really can lose them ever, but that's just my opinion. But anyway, I think that he picked the wrong person. When you said he may have chosen you because you were a foreigner and naive and raised in a culture where psychological trauma is not really on the forefront of anybody's discussion.
Well, not quite sure about bolted lightning, but well, we've got to do our utmost best and beyond for our children.
Ella, when you think about how, yes, maybe at one time when society was much smaller in number and methods of communication and entertainment were not were very limited, some people practice these things maybe on a high level of nobility or priesthood or whatever, but religion. But most people luckily escaped it. But now, when we have these very widespread, interconnected, all-encompassing technologies that reach everyone, and in the American household, they've got TVs in every room, and the children watch their channels, and in the cartoons, there's all this sinister stuff put on a subliminal level, and now on a much less subliminal. It's pretty overt, some of these designs that they work into Disney movies, and even the comments and the jokes and the fashions, and I mean, it's in everything. The world is getting more and more sinister and vulgar by the hour. And so I can see how this mindset rather, is being normalized and spread, and it's been very systematic, and everybody's had a taste of it. I bet you in the most far off regions of Africa, people have somehow been tainted or brushed with this. I mean, everybody is wearing, nobody can, say no to McDonald's in the third world, and they're wearing the fashions and clothes and listening to the music and watching the movies that are pouring out of America. So it's not just America, obviously, it's Britain as well, but the Western culture, if its aim and ambition is to spread all this as fast as possible and as effectively as possible, and as I always say, as the generations are born, people, the people who are most against this kind of enculturation or socialization, they will die off, and it's their offspring.
That's right. They be people being brainwashed from generation to generation. They want to create the society where people gonna be enslaved and they're gonna be happy in their enslavement. They want slaves, but who are unaware and happy.
That's right. That's right. So anyway, let's stop here so that we can both rest and listeners can rest, and maybe we can have another discussion in the near future. But I know that you have your website, you have tried different ways of raising money so that you can pursue the freeing of Elisa and Gabriel, who are now in somebody's custody somewhere, foster care in Britain. You've talked to the authorities, you've been emailing them. Let's quickly go to the Audi ad, because I wanted to touch on that before we concluded. There was some circulation of the possibility that the girl shown in the Audi 2017 Super Bowl commercial might be Elisa, and a couple of YouTubers did overlays of Elisa's face on top of the face of this young girl used in this Audi commercial that aired at the Super Bowl. But I think you went into greater examination of the footage. There is a high-resolution version of this commercial available on the website Venables, Bell and Partners, and you can see it's under Audi ad, which is on the front page, and if you click on the ad, it will take you to the link.
Yes, well, it's actually you was the one who spotted the dent. Remember, we had this. Someone sent me the pictures of Jesse Giacomatzi, and we already knew the name because someone got the list, the cast list from the agency, and the dent. Remember the dent in the teeth that started to become an important point, and I was really looking and looking and looking, and of course this high resolution version is you can see this much better, and I guess that's why the YouTube it was a little bit is difficult. It's difficult to quite see exactly the all the features.
Yeah, the YouTube was a lower resolution and much more indistinct and murky. And when you go to the high-res version and you actually click on the setting on the screen, it's at the bottom right corner, and you can pick 1080 is the highest resolution version of the video that you can play. And what I think you're referring to is dentition, which is the arrangement and development of teeth in the mouth. And the little girl who was used, who seems to be a little bit older, Jessie, than Elisa, she has a different arrangement of front teeth in her mouth than Elisa does. And I also noticed the hair parts, it's very stubborn. Hair parts usually in one place, it likes to just do that. That might have to do with the location of cowlicks, which are the sort of bursts of hair growing in a circular pattern. But Elisa has a left part, and this Jessie has a much more central part. And I also noticed some baked-in freckles on Jessie, which suggests that she is from Southern California and has a darker complexion than Elisa, who would be living in England, much more north, to Malibu, or 818 area code, where Jessie appears to be from, because on the internet, if you Google her, you will see a headshot of her and the ways to, I guess, contact her agent or something. But it seems to me that there's just an uncanny resemblance from certain angles to Elisa, but from other angles, it looks very much like it's not Elisa, which led some people to believe in the beginning that they just sandwiched Elisa into this ad in kind of like a prank way, and they'd used two girls. But I think when you look closely at the high res and the teeth and various things.
Yeah. No, it's all. If you look carefully and at the better quality video, you can see that it all makes sense. It's not Alisa they used. And then, of course, I had a confirmation from the social worker who I finally got hold of, was able to speak to. And I also received quite extensive email all of a sudden because before they were simply ignoring me and my family. And so now they responded, and now she confirms that the children are in the same placement they were. And she went ahead and described how happy they are. And Alisa is practicing guitar. She's really enjoying it. Gabriel plays football, and they're very happy. Well, I'm not quite sure how children could be happy and being cut off from their family and their mother, but that's what she says. So Alisa could be possibly as well in this ad. This could be possible, anything possible, but the facial features, right? So when you look properly, like frame by frame, although there are some angles was some angles were very different. Like you can see like different nose, and
There were some angles that were extremely similar, like even the frontal shot from slightly above that they show on the front page of that website for that ad agency, that looks a lot like Elisa, and I can see how people would immediately start thinking that there's a tremendous similarity. But when you really look at the entire video and you start saying, is this Elisa? Is this Jessie? Is this Elisa? Is this? And when you look more and more carefully and you start examining things like teeth, ears as well, and then the skin, these tonal qualities of the skin, placement of the freckles, it's pretty clear that it's close, but it isn't. Just a couple of angles make it very hard. If those were the only pictures you saw, those couple of angles, you might say, yeah, that's it, same person. But when you see the actual playing out of the face going in all different directions, and you, of course, have a huge number of photos of Elisa, even though it's been a couple of years and her face may have changed, her teeth may have grown bigger, but still. Anyway, it's good we covered that just so that people know that they don't need to, unless they want to, they don't need to follow that rabbit hole any further. But I just want to thank you for your time, and I'm going to put a link up to your website or websites where people can watch maybe this film, or there's a link to it, the one that you're talking about, Aleister Crowley, that you referred to a couple of times, but there's definitely posts and a lot of material at the website, and you'll be adding more, and you'll be explaining your different campaign attempts. And as you know, as this progresses, if people get to know you better, I'm so glad that you've surfaced. Maybe you were always there, but I didn't know how to reach you, and it's been very edifying to me.
Yeah, and by the way, I meant to mention it so many times, and every time I forget, and I don't want to interrupt. The word kids is actually in their terminology means sacrificial goats. And this is what they call our children. They call our children kids.
I know, you mentioned that to me, and I had heard it before, and I immediately regretted saying it that way, because since I learned it from you, I have tried to stop using that word. I didn't really know why that word was employed. I thought it was something to do with kindergarten and then kiddie-garten and then kids, but that was not a very thorough.
No, I brought it up so for other people to hear that, because it's just such an integrated word, isn't it? Everybody using it without knowing, and then they add power to their intention, no? And that's so we've got to be aware on many levels of what's going on around us. We've got the ability to be aware, so let's do it.
Yeah, and I want to close on that word intention. You know, people listening to this show, please know we have intention as well, and we have power in our intention. And just because they do these really dreadful things to us to completely take over our souls, our spirits, they're draining us of the. We're asset creators in our own lives, which they figure out tricks and games to take from us, our wealth. Our energy is capsizing from all the programs and assaults that we have to wade through on a daily basis. So we have intention, and we can listen to a show like this and then simply put out the intention that we will do everything in our control, and we will think about this several times a day, many times a week, to make this known to others. Do something, even if it's just putting out the thought, the spirit form of taking this world back, turning it around, something. I don't really know how to express what I'm saying, but our intention is worth something too, and we have to use it. We have to know that we can use it. So that's how I wanted to end. I really thank you for your contribution in terms of this very painful discussion that you've had to endure, but it's a gift to others so they can learn the depths of some of these enterprises that are hidden from us but are becoming more known about thanks to our connection that we make between each other and ourselves.
Absolutely, and to heighten our awareness, because the more aware we are, the better we can see. Because if we know about these things, about what's happening, how does it happen, we know where to look. And on the other, also just quickly, I wanted to add something to what you were saying just a minute ago about our intention. Even to wake up and just to make it as a practice, maybe just for 5 minutes before like getting up and get going, for 5-10 minutes, just imagine and just imagine how we would like this world to be, what we would like to happen to our lives, to our world, to our planet, and to put all this beautiful, use our beautiful imagination to put as much as possible of the both positive things, love and an abundance of whatever we wish, and just to make it a practice during a day, maybe like wake up, maybe stop sometimes during a day, or finish the day with these intentions, and to to use our power in a deliberate, creative, positive way for the highest good of all, because we're all connected.
I want to bring up the pineal gland because I learned from Michael Tellinger from a podcast that he did back in October. He's pretty famous, you can look him up. He said that as our eyes have rods and cones to see the world around us, our pineal gland, this very powerful gland that you spoke of earlier, has rods and cones as well. And the pineal gland is very compromised now because of the way that we grow up, in the environment we grow up in, and the harm that the elites are doing to our pineal gland in all the ways that you discussed, and overall in terms of its calcification through fluoride and other noxious
Practices perhaps, no?
Yeah. So if we can preserve and save and wake up and reverse the damage to our pineal gland, if these rods and cones in our pineal gland are able to work as well, Tellinger in his podcast explained that the rods and cones in the pineal gland, they make the stuff of your visions, your imagination happen. So your eyes, rods and cones, are interpreting and delivering images of the world around you, and then your imagination makes images of the world you want. For instance, it envisions, it imagines, and it's the rods and cones in the pineal gland, were they working properly, that will make that happen. So those rods and cones actually have the very amazing power of turning what you imagine into reality. And so I don't know much more than that, but when I heard that, I thought, well, gosh, if that's true, then that's quite something. So that's why I think it's so important to use this intention, use this visualization that you described, Ella, and tell our pineal glands to wake up and start working.
You know, you've got pineal gland, but then you've got this left prefrontal cortex is like a GPS. Once you start to imagine or visualize certain things, your goals, your dreams, then the more often you do it, then centers kicks in, and this is like a GPS. It's like looks around and senses around and bring you exactly the kind of picks up on the specific in pieces of information that are relative to your vibration, to the energy that you put into your dream, which you just visualized.
No, this is all useful. We have to start somewhere, so we're dabbling and grappling with the basic turning into words. But I always believe that the most powerful part of us is what doesn't get turned into words, but just is felt, and we are that, and we do it, and we don't need words to express it. So anyway, we're going to close here so we can carry on with our day, and many, many thanks and much love and support to Ella, our guest, the person who's given us such a gift of insight and understanding.
And thank you so much, Sophia, as well. Thank you for your incredible support, emotional, psychological, and as a researcher, I just learned so many things that fits perfectly to what I studied, and it's just incredible. And thank you so much for giving me opportunity to bring it to voice Alisa and Gabrielle, and to bring people's attention to this particular case, because it's just so it just reflects this whole situation of what's going on so many different aspects in so various of ways. So thank you so much, and thank you everybody for taking time listening and supporting Alisa and Gabriel, and our campaign to free our children.
I will include the links in the show description so that people can go to Ella's sites and learn more and do something tangible to lend their support if they so wish. So, all right, all the best to everyone, to you, Ella, and we will maybe have a visit from you again soon.
Thank you so much, Sophia.
Hi, this is Sophia, here to tell you a little more about my newsletter. Several years ago, I was encouraged to write a personal newsletter, not an email compilation of other people's posts. For a while I shrank from the idea, but I finally gave it a shot. I was a little nervous. What would I say over 6 single-spaced pages, and who would even care to read it? But fools go where angels fear to tread, and I plunged ahead with monthly issues, and lo and behold, it actually grew legs, and people seemed to like it. I call it a subscription newsletter to bring you bits and pieces that clarify understanding as I come to learn more in my own rabbit hole discoveries. Topics really vary, but as I pick one and descend deeper into it, all kinds of dots begin to connect, and my newsletter becomes a way for me to record a deep dive into the rabbit hole, of course, resulting in revelations that hadn't occurred to me. And they may not have occurred to others either, so what you're getting is a ramble with me, written in a personal way, with resources you can go to on your own to do your own rabbit hole dive. Composing the 6 pages has become very gratifying for me, and I now really love creating this newsletter for all of you. It requires a minimum $50 annual donation, and it arrives by snail mail, hard copy, for you to collect if you like, as some people do, or pass on to someone else. Samples are posted on my aboutthesky.com website under the newsletter tab. Thanks for listening, and see you again soon for another podcast.